Let's begin by davening that the zchut of our learning should help to bring home the hostages and protect our soldiers and Am Yisrael and all of the innocents and bring a speedy end to all of our conflicts.
Amen.
Okay. We're going to go back to read again what we did last week, but I want to try to get a little bit more depth before we go on. This part of the Gemara that's talking about the sources for how I know that Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayot, and Shfichut Damim are Yahareg V'Alei Avor, the things for which you're supposed to be put to death, or allow yourself to be put to death, rather than transgress. These are discussed much more fully. This question is discussed much more fully in Masechet Sanhedrin. It's also a part of the sugya that appears in Masechet Brachot. But a fuller examination is to look through the whole sugya in Masechet Sanhedrin, which we're not going to do. As interesting and as compelling as this sugya is, it's a kind of digression from what we're immediately concerned with. But nonetheless, I want us to try to understand the part that appears here. So we're going to go back to here where we started last time. Avodah Zarah Minalan. Let me make this a little bigger. And Michael, you can read.
Okay, my turn. Avodah Zarah Minolin, Titania, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Im ne'emar b'kol nafshecha, lama ne'emar b'kol meodecha. V'im ne'emar b'kol meodecha, lama ne'emar b'kol nafshecha. Ele lomer lecha, im yesh lecha adam shegufo chaviv alav mimeno, לכך נאמר בכל נפשך. אם יש לך אדם שמממנו חביב עליו מגופו, לכך נאמר בכל מיודך.
Good. Okay, so what's the question in the Gemara?
So the Gemara wants to know what the textual source is for the prohibition of Avodah Zarah, not prohibition of Avodah Zarah, but that it overrides B'chuach Nefesh. You have to let yourself be killed rather than practice Avodah Zarah.
Right, very good. So how does Rabbi Yezer learn that?
He learns it from the pasuk from the Shema and Devarim, and B'chol Nafshecha, B'chol Miyodecha.
Okay, so he learns it because, hi, Paul, can you hear us? Yeah. He's putting on his earphones. Okay. All right, Paul, can you hear us? Hello? Do you hear us? Hello? Hello? Do you hear? Yes, do you hear?
It's not loud enough. I'm chasing. Yes, I do hear. Yeah, it's okay. How are you?
Okay, good. How are you?
Okay.
All right, so we're reviewing what we did last week. So we just read this part of the Gemara. We're saying, so where do I know that Avodah Zarah overrides Pikuach Nefesh? I learned it from this Braita where Rabbi Yezer says he learns it out from the Ribui of B'chol Nafshecha B'chol Me'odecha. So he says, if I have one, why do I need the other? Why, if I have B'chol Levavcha, B'chol Nafshecha B'chol Me'odecha, why do I need both, right? So he says, Elul Malach, so if you have a person whose body is more dear to him than his money, that's why it says B'chol Nafshecha. That is, if the Torah just said B'chol Ma'odecha, then I might think that if you were being pressured to be over an avodah zarah, um, at the expense of your life, even though you would be willing, let's say, to give up all of your money, but not you wouldn't be willing to give up your life. So that's why it says b'chol nafshecha. V'im yesh adam shemamanocha v'velav mikufo. But let's say the choice was giving up all of your money, giving up all of your wealth. That's more dear to him than his life. So that's why it says b'chol me'odecha, means that you'd have to give up all of your wealth. So either way, uh, you'd have so the point for us is that even at the expense of your life. So it tells me that even though pikuach nefesh is doche, it pushes away the mitzvot in the Torah, but this is one of the mitzvot that it does not push away. And like we learned last time, how do I learn it from here? Because these psukim are not directly talking about avodah zarah, but it starts off with Ahavta Hashem Elokecha. So as Michael Werner put it last week, you have to love the Lord your God to the exclusion of any other type of worship. And I'll just remind you also that the first paragraph, this paragraph of Shema, we learned in the Mishnah in Masachet Brachot, this is referred to as Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim. The whole idea of this, of saying this as part of Shema, is to take upon yourself the yoke of heaven, right? So you're accepting upon yourself God as your God. And so so you have to accept it upon yourself to this extent, even at the expense of all of your wealth and even at the expense of your own life. Right. Rashi says, "Lama nemar b'chol me'odecha, yomar hechaviv shebehem, v'chol sheken she'eno chaviv." Let the Torah say the one that's more dear from the two, and then all the more so the one that would be less dear. In other words, I don't really have to have b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'odecha. Torah should have just told me, as it were, the more chamur one, the one that's more dear to me. And if I have to give up that, so all the more so I have to give up the other one. So Rabbi Eliezer, though, posits that it could be that you have a person whose life is more dear to them than their money, but you could also have the other case where somebody's money is more dear to them than their life. You might ask, if a person is going to, if a person's not willing to give up their money, even at the expense of their life, well, so they're going to die anyway. But you can answer that by saying that the person doesn't want to give up their wealth, even if they can have it, but they want to maybe pass it on to their heirs. In other words, they're willing to die for their wealth, thinking that if they don't have it, but at least it's going to be passed on. And so you could have such a case where somebody would be willing to die rather than give up their wealth. In any event, so the connection to Avodah Zarah, though, is this idea that this pasuk of V'chol Nafshecha V'chol Me'odecha is said in the context of Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim, and so I learned from that you have to be Mekayem Ol Malchut Shemayim, Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shemayim, even at the expense of your life. So What it means?
Shell.
Yes.
It's strange they don't mention Kol Vavcha.
Yeah, well,
It seems that the nefesh here, your life and your money, these are it's materials, yes, and it's not something pnimi, something in
something inner, something, yeah.
Which belongs to you.
So I'm going to leave that question. I told Michael before you came, what we have here is a part of a longer sugya, and the more extensive discussion of this sugya, it appears in Masechet Brachot, and it appears more in this context of avodas of Yareg v'al Yavor. The main sugya for that is in Masechet Sanhedrin. It's a much longer discussion, and the drashot on every word practically of V'ahavta appears partly there, partly in Brachot, and some other places. So all that to say, I'm not going to try to answer that question. For our purposes, this is what we need to know. We need to know that the Gemara here, according to the Gemara here, the way I know that Avodah Zarah, that transgressing of Avodah Zarah does not override the mitzvah of pikuach nefesh, or the concept of pikuach nefesh. I learn it from here. So then we get to the next part of the Gemara, and we read this last time, but as I said at the end of last shir, I want to go through this more carefully, and I want to look at all the Rashis. I want us to understand this a little bit better. So here, Paul, why don't you read Gilui Arayot?
גילוי עריות ושפיכת דמים מנה לן דתיינה רבי אומר כי כאשר יקום איש על רעהו ורצחו נפש, כן הדבר הזה, וכי מה עניין למדנו מרוצח לנערה המאורסה. אלא הרי זה בא ללמד ונמצא למד מה הנערה המאורסה ניתן להצילה בנפשו, אף רוצח. מה אני צריך לעשות עם הפלוס הזה? מסורת, איזושהי הערת ביניים שניתן להצילו בנפשו, שבא ממסורת הש"ס. מה רוצח יהרוג ואל יעבור, אף נערה המאורסה יהרג ואל יעבור.
Right. Actually, just 1 second. I should put that as a footnote. That's better. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So, Gilui Arayot u'shfichat damim. So where do I know that one is supposed to be Yareg v'al Yavor in the face of Gilui Arayot or in the face of Shfichut Damim? Where do I learn it from? So Rebbe, this is also Rebbe. The first Raisa was Rebbe Eliezer. This is Rebbe. And he learns it from this pasuk, Ki kasher yakum ish al re'ehu retzachu nefesh kein hadavar hazeh. Now, we looked at these psukim last week, but I want to point out before we continue here, there's an important drasha that the Gemara doesn't bring here. It brings in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, but we'll need to know it in order to understand the logic of what's going on here. So just a second. Let me share this screen. So this is the din of the Nara Murasa. And the din of the Nara Murasa is we have two cases. We have the case of Nara Betulama Urasa Ish, who is apparently raped in the city. And then we have the case that we're talking about here, where she's apparently raped in the field that is
Fields,
outside
yeah.
of outside of the city. So in this case, what does it say? So if the man found this young woman who was engaged and took hold of her, that the man took hold of her and lay with her, then the man is put to death. The man who had laid with her by himself, right, alone. And l'nara lota said don't do anything to the nara. Ein l'nara chet mavet. She doesn't have the sin that would oblige her to capital punishment. Ki kasher yakumish areyehu etzachon nefesh kein hadavar hazeh. Because as a man will arise on his neighbor and murder his nefesh, murder his soul, his life force. So is this thing, right? This thing is the same. How is it the same? Ki v'sadeh mitza'ah, because he found her in the field. Sa'aka hanara hamorasa ve'ein moshiala. This engaged woman cried out, and there was no one who helped her. No one was helping her. No one saved her. So what do we get out of this? So there's a drasha here. No, not here. I'll show you the drasha from the Torah Tumima. So Torah Tumima says, "Ve'ein Moshiach." Tana debei Rabbi Yishmael. So we learn in the Braita from the Yeshiva Rabbi Yishmael. Minayin l'na'ara hamorasa shenitan lahatzila bin nafsho. That she is given over to be saved with his life, with his soul. Dichtiv ve'ein moshiala, because it's written there was no one to help her. Ha yesh moshiala. So what does it imply? If there was somebody to help her, ata moshiala b'chol davar shato yachol moshia. Then whoever would be the Moshiach, whoever would be the Savior, he would save her in any way that she could be saved. So that's the drasha. The drasha is saying that these last words, vein Moshiach, right? Kitzakan nara morasa vein Moshiach, is coming to tell me something that was maybe not obvious before. That the reason she's not going to be chayav herself, because if she was complicit, we learned earlier she's complicit, and it's not really rape, or she acquiesces to the rape willingly, then she could be put to death. So why is she not put to death? Because here she cried out, and there was no savior for her. So the fact that there's no savior for her tells me that if there was a savior for her, that she could have been saved from the rape altogether. How would she have been saved? So Tanna Devei Rabbi Shmuel says she would have been saved by somebody who would do anything to keep her from being raped. Anything meaning including killing the rapist. So that's an important point that we need to take into account. So what it tells me is that when I learn this parsha of Na'ara Milrasa, I'm already introduced to the idea that what? That in the case of Gilui Arayot, it could be Yehareg V'al Yavor, somebody could be put to death rather than transgress. So in this case, what we're saying is that if there's a rapist who's trying to rape a Na'ara Milrasa, and somebody else sees this, and the only way that he can prevent the rape would be by killing the rapist, then the rapist will be Yehareg, he will be killed rather than transgress. So it tells you that in the case of Gilui Arayot, that Gilui Arayot is a case of Yehareg V'al Yavor. So when we look back at the Gemara, so that's how we introduce this part of the Gemara, Gilui Arayot Shfichut Damim Menalan. So now I know Gilui Arayot. I know it because of this, because of the Ein Moshiach.
Can I ask a question,
Sure.
which is not directly related, but nevertheless? What happens with Ne'aram who was raped? Does the Khatan, who is Muaras, engaged with her,
Yeah, right.
does he have to marry her anyway? Now she is no more Betula.
The quick answer is no, he doesn't have to marry her anyway.
That's a problem.
That right. When we learn Ketubot, we'll learn all about this. If we learn long enough, we'll get to Ketubot. But no, there are two cases that the Gemara that the Torah brings of the onus. This is onus, and the other is mefateh. And in those cases, there are cases, but that's talking about an Arab Tula who's not Murasa. In those cases, there's a basis for saying that the person who either seduced her or rapes her, that he has to marry her, even if he doesn't want to.
She doesn't want to.
So, like I said, this is where I don't want to digress on this, but it gets into a whole discussion in the case in there. In other words, the Torah, but just to say quickly that the Torah is concerned about her in that sense that this person has to marry her because he's essentially taken away from her tulim, which lowers her value, as it were, and may leave her in a state where she can't get married at all. And so he has to take that responsibility because the default in the society was that the woman would have to be married in order to be supported, right? She's going to be supported by her father until she's married, and then she's going to be supported by the husband afterwards. In later rabbinic law, and even after, post-Talmudic law, there's a lot more discussion about that, and in terms of the practice and the practicality which we are not going to get into tonight. But okay, but for our purposes, so this is how we're going to start off. But last week we discussed this part. Ki kasher yakum ish al re'eu retzachon nefesh kein hadavar hazeh. As a man would rise up on his friend, on his neighbor, and murder him, so is this thing. So this is the same. In other words, this the case of the Na'ara Mu'rasa, who's being raped by a man. This is the Torah compares this to somebody who gets up to try to murder his fellow man. So Rebbe says, "V'chima inyan lamanu merotzeach u'na'ara hamurasa." So what do we learn from the Rotzeach that teaches us about the Na'ara Mu'rasa? In other words, the Torah says that this is comparable to the case of Rotzeach. Na'ara Mu'rasa is comparable to the case of the Rotzeach. So Rebbe says, so what exactly is comparable? What do we learn from the case of Rotzeach that's applicable now? So he says, Ela harei ba'al lamed v'nimtza lamed. It comes to teach us something. In other words, that's ostensibly why it's coming, but it turns out nimtza lamed. It comes to teach us something about itself. In other words, we're actually going to learn out about the Rotzeach from the Na'ara Mu'rasa. Ma Na'ara Mu'rasa nitan lahatzilo b'nafsho. Just like the Na'ara Mu'rasa, she can be saved with his life, the life of the potential rapist. Zafrotzeach nitan lahatzilo b'nafsho. It tells me that the same is true for the Rotzeach, that he can also be saved, that we can save the potential victim with the life of the potential murderer, right? Because what's the norm? The norm is that, okay, let's say, God forbid, somebody, Reuven murders Shimon. So if Reuven murders Shimon and he's caught, he's brought before a Beit Din. And if there's, if all of the evidence is there, we have the witnesses and all the drisha v'chakira and all of the things that you need to sentence a capital sentence, then he'll be put to death for the murder. The Torah here is concerned about trying to prevent the murder altogether, right? We don't want the murder to happen and then later on have to bring this guy to court. We just don't want the murder to happen. So what Rebbe is saying is I learn out from here that I can prevent the murder even with the death of the potential murderer. So now the same logic that we saw from the Ein Moshiach is going to apply here. That if there would be a Moshiach for the potential victim, that he would be able to save the potential victim in any possible way, including with the killing of the potential murderer. So that tells me that murder is something that is not more powerful than pikuach nefesh, because you could say, but what about the life of the murderer? Why don't I say that pikuach nefesh dochet hakol? I shouldn't be allowed to kill him because of pikuach nefesh for his nefesh, right? But so that's what I learn out. But in this case, in a sense, he's forfeited his life, so he's nitan latzilo b'nafsho. So ma rotzech yareg v'al yavor, af na'ara hamurasa yareg v'al yavor. So the reason these two things, Gilui arayot and shvichut damim, are brought together is because I really learned one out from the other, right? When I did Avodah Zarah, I brought a separate drasha, But I'm going to learn out Gilui Arayot and Shfichut Damim from the case of Naramu Rasa, because the Torah itself connects the case of Naramu Rasa to the case of Rotseach. So now let's look at Rashi on all of this, on this part of the sugya. So he says, so we bring Rabbi Kikashe Yakum.
Shem.
Yes.
Okay, now you are allowed to kill somebody in the case of איך אומרים, legitime
Rotseach.
defense. Yes, if you want to, אם אתה רוצה להציל מישהו
All right. So if you want to save someone from being murdered,
be murdered or raped, so. But you are also allowed to kill somebody who has to be killed, according to the law.
yes.
So what's the problem? This is even more.
In other words, you could say,
the-
why didn't I just learn out? Why didn't I just
Yes.
learn it out from there? So that
Yeah.
I'll say it's not exactly the same, but let's try to sharpen your
Let's say if you're
question.
allowed to execute somebody, so this means that you're allowed to kill. Okay. No,
So okay, so
I'm
let's
against, but it's not. I try to understand what they say.
no, I understand. You're not advocating. You're just trying to
Mhm.
understand. So okay, let's separate out the cases and let's try to understand what let's sharpen the question. So in the case, so the Torah gives us dozens of cases where someone can be put to death by Beit Din if
Yes.
they're over on any number of different isurim, right?
Mhm. Okay.
Under particular, all right. So the Torah also says lo ta'arog, right? You're not allowed to kill. But the Torah also says that you're supposed to kill, right? There, so it would be a seeming contradiction, except that we don't say that. What we say is that what the Torah says is lo ta'arog means you're not, you're not allowed to murder someone, but there are exceptions to killing. The term that the Gemara uses is it's hutra michlalo. That this is a mitzvah shu hutra michlala. This mitzvah was released from its general rule. So there's a general rule that says don't kill. But the Torah but what does it mean? Except where the Torah says explicitly to kill. So it means you can't just go around killing people, because that's lo taharog. But in the case where somebody violated a certain commandment and all the requirements are fulfilled, uh, that they're found chayav for capital punishment, then there's a mitzvah to kill them. So
Among others, the Nara Murasa, who didn't shout in town. Yes.
yes, for example, right, she has right, she has a din mavet, right, that she can be put to death if she, we'll just say that if she acquiesced to intercourse, that means that she's also chayavet, and she can be put to death. So what you're asking is, why didn't I just learn from there? Why didn't I just learn from any number of cases, including but not limited to Rotseach, that the Torah tells me that under certain circumstances, you can put somebody to death. That means that there's something higher than pikuach nefesh, right? Because each one of these people, I could say, how can the Torah say to put them to death? Pikuach nefesh is dochet hakol. Pikuach nefesh, the saving their life, should be above everything else. So as I understand it, I'm going to make a differentiation, and I'm going to say, so in the case where there is where the Torah mandates mitat beit din, so that's true. That mitat beit din clearly overrides pikuach nefesh in the case of whoever's condemned. Clearly, we're not concerned anymore about their pikuach nefesh in the face of the fact that the Torah has said that they have to be put to death. The exceptional case that I have here is somebody who is not condemned to death by a Beit Din. So this now takes it out of the realm of what a court might decide. And it's telling me something new. It's telling me that even when there isn't a court that's going to deliver a judgment on somebody, there's still going to be a case. There will be one case outside of court that a person should rather be put to death than be allowed to commit a transgression. So, because what's exceptional, the person we're calling the Rotzeach here, Udayin lo Ratzach, he's not actually a murderer. He hasn't actually put himself in a position yet to be Chayav Mitat Beit Din. He's only a murderer in potentia, but he hasn't actually murdered. And in that case, so that then there I need the Torah to go out of its way to tell me that he's Yareg v'Yavor, that he can be stopped even at the expense of his own life. And the reason is going to be the reason that's Amit Bakesh, right? The reason that seems to be presenting itself is because we see that he is about to commit a murder, and the Torah in that case is going to say, we would rather have him die than commit this transgression. Let's continue this discussion as we look at Rashi. So, Michael, ki ka'asher yakum in Rashi.
Ki kasher yakum b'na'ara ha'mu'urasa kativ.
Okay, what does that mean?
So it's like when a man rises up, the young engaged woman, it's written about.
Right. All Rashi is doing here, he's just telling us where I'll find this pasuk, right? Because when Rashi's writing his commentary, it wasn't, in a nicely printed Gemara that had the little references on the side to tell you where the pasuk of Ki Kasher Yakum is. So Rashi's reminding us, you're going to find this pasuk Ki Kasher Yakum in the parsha that deals with Nara Urasa. That's all he's saying. But let's continue, and let me move this over a little more. Okay, so Michael, continue. Malamadnu.
Malamadnu merotzeach l'na'ara ha'mu'urasa shehu kamishpat harotzeach ken mishpat hadavar hazeh. Ma na'ara ha'mu'urasa iten reshut lamatzil lahatzila ba'ilat zo b'nafsho shel boel zo lehergo ad shelo bo aleha taktiv ein moshiela ha yesh moshia Yoshienu b'kol tzidei teshua.
Okay. Did you understand what you read?
No, I have to read it again. Sometimes when I'm reading, I don't always understand what I'm reading.
That's okay. So let's go through part by part.
Yeah.
Shuhu
Okay.
kemishpat rotzeach ken mishpat hadavar hazeh.
So it is like the mishpat, the judgment of the murderer, such as the judgment of this thing, the rape of the engaged woman. And
Right. So the way we're reading this is really so when you read Rashi, and we've seen this now, but I just want to express this clearly. Sometimes Rashi is filling out the sentence, and sometimes there's a sentence and then Rashi's explaining it. So here he's beginning by filling out the sentence. The sentence in the Gemara is Mala Mana Mirotzech Narahamu Rasa, and then he's continuing the question. What did we learn from the Rotzeach regarding the Nara Murusa, that it is that Shehu Mishpata Rotseach Ken Mishpata Davar Zeh. That the law regarding the murderer is going to be the same law about this thing, about the Nara Murasa. So what is it? So then go ahead. Manara.
So just as the young engaged woman uh, there's permission is given to save her by load from being raped with Zebinafsho Shel Boaz, with the soul of the rapist. Zelahargo Anshalom.
Okay, let's.
Okay.
You're getting it, but you missed a little bit. So I just want to
Okay.
make sure we get it. So just as the Nara Murasa, permission is given lamatzil, to the savior, to the person
Oh,
who's saving her. Permission is given lematzil, to the person who's saving her, to save her from the intercourse of this one. In other words, the rapist, benafsho shel boelze, with the with the life of this rapist, lehorgo, by killing him.
okay.
She can be saved from this rapist by killing him. Ad.
Until he didn't come on to her. So
Right.
until he raped her, you can kill her. Once he raped
You
her,
can
you can't.
until ad shalobala, right up until the point that in other words, the idea is you have permission to save her by killing this rapist before he has raped her. Ad shalobala, until he has
Yes,
not yet come on. In other words, before he has raped her.
yes.
And how
After the
does
rape, you are not allowed to kill him
after the
anymore.
rape, then no. In other words, after the rape, then he'll have to be
You can
taken
go to the
to a.
Beit Din also
Then the
to
Beit
get
Din
it.
is going to
Yeah.
kill him.
Mm.
That's the idea, right? But once the rape has been committed, then you can know. Then there, it's not Yareg v'al Yavor anymore. Ki kvar avar, right? The transgression has already taken place, and then it's up to Beit Din to carry out the punishment. So and where does Rashi learn it from? Kedichtiv.
Like it is written that there was no savior for her. But
Yeah.
but but if there is, but yes, Moshe, if there is, and he saves,
Yoshiena, he
he
should
saves her.
save her.
Oh, he should save her, but with all the tzidei, the means of saving her. I don't know how to translate
Very
that.
good. Yeah. All the sides, but all the means is actually a better translation. And with any means of chua, any means of saving her, you can save her. So that's the case of the Nara Murasa. But Rashi has to add this in to tell me Ein Moshiela, right? So this part of the sugya is not here in Masechet Yoma. Rashi gets this from the sugya in Sanhedrin, which we also see in this pasuk in the Sifra, in the Sifrei. In the Sifrei on this pasuk is where we see the drasha. So
But I
yes,
guess this is also true for a murder, which is not a rape. You are probably not allowed to kill the murderer after he already
it
killed after the
ex,
murder.
exactly. In other words, once the murder is committed, then the same thing. So I I'll just add in, right, when you learn this in greater depth, and some of this you might know, but we've already talked about this in the context of other Isurim. When somebody is about to do an Isur Torah, then the let's say sort of like the ideal, as it were, the ideal situation is that there are two kosher witnesses. They see that this person is about to commit this Isur Torah. And so they call out to them and they say, if you, let's say in this case, if you murder this person, then you will be chayav mitat beit din. And then the person, and so that's the hatra'ah, right? That's warning them. They have to warn him that if you continue, you're going to be chayav mitah. And then if the person continues anyway, then they can be brought to Beit Din, and the witnesses will testify that they gave hatra'ah, and on the basis of that, he can be put to death. So the chidush of the Torah here again is that here you have, it could be a situation where maybe there are two witnesses, maybe there's one witness, and he or she realizes that the only option here to stop the murder is going to be to stop the murderer. And so the murderer can be stopped even at the expense of their own life. And so, and there the chidush is that unlike the case where the Torah mandated mitat beit din, right, where the Torah mandated capital punishment, here the Torah is saying that what the Torah is coming from a different angle and saying that ya'areg al yavor, that this person should be put to death in these cases, right? In this case of let's say rotzech unaramu rasav gilui arayot, it's better that they should be put to death by anyone rather than do the transgression. So the transgression is so chamur that the Torah doesn't want the transgression to be committed at all, even if it would result in the death of the transgressor. So malamana mirotzech nara amurasa, shu kemishpat rotzech ken mishpat hadavar hazeh. So I say as follows: in the case of the nara murasa, the Torah gives permission to someone to save her from being raped, even at the expense of his own life. So this is the Nimtzar Lamed. This is going to tell us now that this is also true about the Rotzeach. So now, Paul, you continue. Rotzeach ya'areg v'al ya'avor.
רוצח, יהרג ואל יעבור, אם אמרו לו הרוג חבריך ואם לאו, הרוג אותך.
Yeah, keep reading.
I try to understand. יהרג ואל יעבור, יהרג ואל יעבור, עבירה זו כדמפורש לקמן.
Okay, so here Rashi is anticipating what the Gemara is going to say next. Right now, the Gemara introduces this idea, Rotseach Yareg V'al Yavor. So until now, I would say, what is the case of the Rotseach Yareg V'al Yavor? It's the case that the Torah brings, Kasher Yakum Ish Al Reyehu. Right? If you see somebody who's about to kill somebody else, then you as a bystander, you can kill him to prevent him from committing murder. But now Rashi's also introducing another implication of this limud, and the other implication is im amrulo harog chaverecha. If they said to somebody, kill your friend, and if not, I will kill you. Yareg, that person has to allow himself to be killed and not to transgress this transgression, as is explained further on. And we're going to look at that today. Right? We'll look at that case. The Gemara brings it right after. Afna Hamurasa. Paul, continue. Afna Hamurasa.
המורסה, אם יאמרו בעול ארוסת חבריך, או יהרג ואל יעבור. אבל היא אינה מצווה למסור את נפשה, והיא אינה עושה כלום, לקרקע עולם בעלמא היא, וראיה לדבר אסתר. Why?
Okay. So this second part we'll do in a minute, but the first part,
Don't
no,
understand what Esther has to do with it. There was no rape. She consented.
no. So, wait. We'll come back to Esther in a moment. But in other words, just what's the Gemara saying? Rotzeach yareg v'ayavor. So also af na'ara hamurasa will be yareg ayavor. And now, if the case of the Rotzeach yareg v'ayavor is this case of if someone was given the ultimatum of killing somebody or to be killed, the parallel, Rashi says, will be if someone was given the ultimatum of having sex with the betrothed of his friend, right? And there's a betrothed woman, or to be killed, he has to allow himself to be killed and not to violate. Rashi adds in, she herself, the woman in question, she is not commanded limsor et nafsha, to give up her life. In other words, in this scenario where she's about to be raped, she doesn't have to, or let's say somebody says to her, be raped, right, to this Nara Murasa, be raped or we'll put you to death. She can allow herself to be raped. Rashi's pointing this out because he has to make it clear that what we're talking about here are the perpetrators of the Aveira itself. She's not considered to be a perpetrator if she's being raped. Dihi eina usa klum. She's not doing anything. To karka olam ba'almahi. Karka olam, literally means eternal, eternal land, right? Eternal earth. In other words, she's like, to put it crudely, but it's a little more crudely than this. She's like a piece of meat. In other words, she is going to lie there and someone will rape her. So she's not an active participant. And the proof of this is from Esther. So this is referring to this sugya back in Sanhedrin, and this is referred to elsewhere in the Gemara in Ksubas, that the question arises about Esther. Esther, how did she allow herself to not just marry, but to actually have intercourse with Achashverosh? Shouldn't she have been? Shouldn't she? So you might say, okay, but look, she was summoned to the king. She was summoned, and the king chose her, and so forth and so on. And she had no choice. But you could say, and what does it mean she has no choice? That let's say if she refused the king, maybe Achashverosh would have put her to death for refusing him. So the Gemara is saying that in the case of Esther, she had no choice. The king would have put her to death, but she didn't have to refuse him because she didn't have to be an active participant in the intercourse. She could lie there and let herself be raped by, as it were, by her husband. She's karka olam. So Rashi's distinguishing here. This is a very important distinction. Esther, or the Naramu Rasa, any woman who is the potential target of rape, is like the potential target of murder. somebody who's running after you to murder you, you're not complicit in, and God forbid, somebody murders, you're not complicit in that murder. No, the Torah isn't mechayev you for having been killed. In the same sense that a woman who's raped, the Torah doesn't mechayev ota for having been raped. That's what Rashi's trying to say here. I want to go on a little further. I want to read this next part and then we're going to stop for tonight. So, Michael, read from here. Vrotzeach gufe.
V'rotzeh gufei menalan savrahi.
Svara.
Savarahi. Dahu da'ata l'kamya deraba amarli Marie Derai, Katlia Lifalni, Nia, Ve'ilo Katilna Lach, Amarle, Niktilcha below Tikto, Machazit Didama Didach Somektafi, Dilma Dama Hadahu Gavra Somektafi.
Okay. So I'm guessing you probably didn't understand a lot of what you read.
No.
All right, it's mostly in Aramaic. So let's go back. The Gemara says, "Rotzeach gufe minalan." The murderer himself. Where do I learn it from? What's the Gemara asking here?
Why you're allowed to put to death a potential murderer?
Okay.
What's the source
So
for that?
what's the source? Minalan. Where do I learn it from? So usually, right, minalan always means I want a source. So sometimes the Gemara is going to bring a pasuk. In this case, the Gemara is going to bring a reasoned argument, a svara, right? It's based on reasoning. What's the reasoning? So then they bring an actual case. And the case was as follows. Dahahu da'ata l'kamei deraba. Right? So usually, like when we're reading in Aramaic and the ending is Yud Hey, that's like a vav ending in Hebrew. It denotes the masculine. It's a masculine possessive. That person that data that came before him, the him is extra in English, but in Hebrew or in Aramaic you add it in. That the person who came before Rabbah, so in other words, this person came to Rabbah, right? One of the Poskim Hador comes to him, Amarle, he said to him, Amarli Mare Durai. Mari Durai just literally means the master of the place where I live.
Door, yeah.
Right. So a dur from the idea of dayar,
Yeah.
a place where you live, right? He's the he's the guy who's in charge of where I live, and he said to me, "Ktale leplanya, murder or kill so and so, like ploni in Hebrew, kill so and so, ve'ilo, and if you don't, right, if not, katilna lach, I will kill you." So what's he asking, Rabbah?
This is our case. Kill somebody oh no, he's asking what he should do in that case. The person who came before Rabbah.
Yeah, he's asking, what should I do? Mari Durai comes before me and he says, listen, you kill Ploni or I'm going to kill you. So what should I do? So let's understand, what's the question? Why should it be why should there be a question here at all? What's this person not sure about?
Well, he's not sure whether he should be killed, he should kill or allow himself to be killed. but we just learned that you should allow yourself to be killed.
So we just learned you should allow yourself to be killed. But so what he's saying is, but he maybe he didn't learn the sugya before. So he
Oh, okay.
says, right? In other words, so he's saying, look, my life is important and his life is important. This is a case of pikuach nefesh. One of us is going to have to die. So maybe I should kill him because then I'll live. And it's my pikuach nefesh. But Rabbah says, no, Amarle, he says to him, niktalach velo tiktol. You should be allowed, you should be killed, you should be let to be killed, and you shall not kill. My chazit, what did you see? Didama didach, that your blood, sumaktve, is redder. It's more red. In other words, what makes you think that your blood is redder than his? Dilma dema dehahu gavra sumaktve. Maybe that person that Mare Durai wants you to kill, maybe his blood is more red. So what does Rabba mean by blood that's more red?
Maybe that it's just if his blood is um, his blood is oh I think it's just a metaphor for just being more important. He's more important than you, or you're more important than him.
Yeah, in other words, what makes you think that you could put it this way? What makes you think that your life is more important than his? Maybe his life is more important than you. In other words, it's a rhetorical question because you can't possibly answer that question. You can't possibly say that one's life is more important than the other. So what's the difference though? So then, okay, but maybe my blood is more important than his. So what's the difference? Why would Rabbah still ultimately tell him not to kill? If you understand my question. What's exceptional about this case? I mean, Rashi brought it up earlier, right? But what's the point of this case? So when we were talking about the Rotseach in the Torah, so we're saying Reuven is running after Shimon and he's about to kill him. So Levi, who's standing on the side, he can kill Reuven to keep Reuven from killing Shimon. Okay, but here, this isn't this guy running after somebody to kill him. He's being presented with an ultimatum. Either you kill this guy or you're going to be killed. Rabbah says you can't kill him. Why not?
Because your blood is not necessarily more important than his.
Okay. But the other thing I want to emphasize here is here. I'll give you an alternate. I'll give you an alternate scenario, which the Gemara talks about elsewhere. Uh, What what if they take this guy and they push him from, let's say, a couple of meters onto an infant? He knows that he's going to crush the infant. Can he allow himself to be pushed off to kill the infant? What's the difference between these two cases?
I'm not sure. I don't think it matters whether it's an infant or an adult.
No, it's just like if he falls at an adult, he might not kill him, but maybe
Yeah.
he falls on a newborn kid, he'll crush him to death. The difference is that here, this person is being asked to, or being commanded to actively kill somebody.
As opposed
He's
to just
being As
Yeah.
opposed to being, in the second case, I could argue he's like Esther. He's Karka Olam. They pushed him. In this case, he's saying, I want you to go and kill such and such a person. So in the case where he's being told that either you actively kill somebody or not, you don't have permission to kill the other person. You can't actively go and kill somebody, even if it's to save your own life in this circumstance, right? In the case where he's going to be pushed off a roof or something and fall on a baby, uh, or else, in other words, or else be killed, he could allow himself to be, theoretically, right? He could allow himself to be pushed and kill the baby because there he's not actively doing anything. Let's look at Rashi here. My chazit dema didach sumak tfei. Paul, you read Rashi.
My chazit dedama didach somek tapi. כלומר, מהי
Sumak tfei.
סומק,
Tfei.
תפה,
Tfei. Tfei is yoter. Sumak you probably know, right? Sumak is adom.
סומק,
Like,
סומק.
right.
אוקיי.
Here, yeah, sumak, right? Klomar.
כלומר, מהי דעתך
Lemishrei.
למסרי בלתה משום וחי בהם ולא שימות בהם, טעמו של דבר לפי שחביבה נפשם של ישראל
Just a second.
לפני המקום יותר מן המצוות, אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, תבטל המצווה ויחיה זה. אוקיי, זה וחי בהם. פיקוח נפש.
Okay, well, we'll see. אבל
אבל
עכשיו,
עכשיו שיש כאן ישראל נהרג, והמצווה בטלה, למה ייטב בעיני המקום לעבור על מצוותו, למה יהיה דמך חביב עליו יותר מדם חבריך ישראל.
Okay, so Rashi's telling us a lot of things here. Let's go through it carefully. And then I have to stop because I have to stop at a quarter till. And then maybe we'll look at it a little bit more next time as well. But what we left out when we were discussing the Gemara, in the case where the guy comes before Rabbah and he was told to kill Ploni or be killed, the Ploni, Rashi understands, is another Jew. It's another Jew. If it would be a non-Jew, according to Rashi, it might have been given a different psak. So Rashi explains this rhetorical point of Rabbah as follows: My chazi didama didach sumaktve. What do you see that your blood is more red? Klomar, my datech lemishrei milta. What is it? Your opinion? Is it your opinion? Lemishrei lahatir milta lahatir davar, to make something mutar, because making something mutar meaning killing, to make the killing permissible. Mishum, and what would be the basis for it? Because I have another drasha that says v'chai bahem v'lo sheyemut bahem. We'll look at this a little bit more next time, right? But you're probably familiar with the pasuk, right? That the Torah is given in order to live by it, and the drasha is to live by it and not to die by it. So here, why does the Torah say b'chai bahem, b'lo sheyamut bahem? Because the lives of Jews are dear to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, more than his mitzvot. In other words, more than Hashem wants us to be mikayem mitzvot, he wants us to live. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, so the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, when he says v'chai b'hem, he says, T'batel ha-mitzvah v'yichya zeh. Let this mitzvah be voided so that this person can live. Aval achshav, Rabbah says to this fellow who's asking him, Sheyesh kan Yisrael neherag. The result is going to be if you cancel this mitzvah, and now you're going to kill a fellow Jew, v'hamitzvah betela, and then you've voided the mitzvah of hariga. Lama yitav b'einei hamakom lavor mitzvato. In that case, why should the Kadosh Baruch Hu be happy to accept this turn of events, that you'll be mevatel this mitzvah in this particular case? Why should you think, what makes you think that your blood, that is your life, is more dear to the Kadosh Baruch Hu than the blood of your fellow Jew? So since you can't say that your blood is more dear than the blood of your fellow Jew, then what Rabbah is saying is, therefore, you don't have a heter to cancel the mitzvah, right? When does v'chai b'hem apply? Chai b'hem will apply, in other words, you can cancel a mitzvah to save a life in a case where there's a clear-cut case that your life, that your life will be saved, and at that moment where a life will be saved, and at that moment you can cancel the mitzvah. But here, you can't say that your life is going to be somehow more dear than the other person's life, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu would be happy to let you cancel the mitzvah for that purpose. That's Rashi's basic argument. And I have to stop. I apologize. But this is, I think, some good food for thought. I
didn't understand.
Okay, so that we'll go over it next time. And then the Gemara is going to go back to continue in the case of the Ubra Shehiricha. We're going to expand on that. But we'll open with this next time. We'll open with Rashi's argument next time. And then that's it for now. So have a good week, and if all goes well, I will connect with you next week from the States.
Washington.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
Laila Tov. Bye bye.